Hello there, and welcome to another episode of Comic Book Veteran. Because I like comic books, as you can see behind me, and I am a veteran. I did 20 years in the Army. If you've watched other episodes before, you've probably heard me say that. So today, I'm going to talk for a moment before I get into the meat of the subject. I have been learning how to do this, so hopefully as I go forward with other episodes, they're going to end up being better and more informative, and I will have better lighting, and all the books on the top row may not be washed out. I'm still learning, so bear with me. But hopefully I will be able to provide you with a little bit of information that you might find interesting. And hopefully provide maybe a basis for some knowledge in the wider comic book community. So today I'm going to talk about another one of the pedigrees. This one I'm going to talk about is called the Crowley copy. Now, the story is that a man by the name of William Crowley was the publisher for Fawcett Comics. Now, Fawcett Comics doesn't exist anymore. They ended up going defunct, I believe, in the 1950s, but then they just kind of disappeared because that after the whole Seduction of the Innocent, which is another episode that will be upcoming, Seduction of the Innocent by Frederick Wortham, and all of that fallout and the way the comic book community had to restructure itself in its entirety. A number of comic book companies went under, and one of those was Fawcett Comics. Now, again, like I said, most of us haven't seen, a lot of people probably haven't seen a Fawcett comic. I know it hasn't been published in 50, 60 years at this point. Well, I guess it'd be further than that, 65 years, ballpark. But we're probably mostly familiar with at least some of the characters, because they were bought out by DC. And in the early 40s, they had a character that was created, I think it was in 1940 actually, by the name of Captain Marvel. Now, before you get all nuts, no, it's not the Captain Marvel that we know. I've got a Captain Marvel over there. Look, right there. That's actually a book that's relevant here. Okay, Marvel Superheroes, I believe that's issue 12. Anyway, the original Captain Marvel was a character that today became known as Shazam. Why did this happen? Well, when DC Comics bought out Fawcett, the original Captain Marvel, or Shazam as we know him, was gone. There was no more. In the early 40s, Captain Marvel, as I understand it, outsold every other superhero. Superman, Batman, everything. Captain Marvel was it. That's why there was a whole Captain Marvel Adventures. There was Captain Marvel Jr., there was Mary Marvel, there was the Captain Marvel family. There were a whole series of books that were out simultaneously published, which just sold like mad, because it was the story of a kid who said a magic word and became a superpowered adult, similar in power to Superman. Lots of kids loved that. But as time went on, after World War II, and then the comic book market kind of tapered off over the next 10 years or so. And a man by the name of William Crowley published those books and a lot of others, and the draw came to, how do we attract more readers? Well, westerns became popular, and then space adventures, and things went on like that. But Mr. Crowley had an idea of, how do we attract young female readers? How do we get them into the fold? And so there was a whole lot of romance comics that were published, because they believed that that's what young female readers wanted. And they wanted the young female readers to read just as much as the young male readers. Is that possible? Absolutely, it's possible. They were just, population figures support it. But nevertheless, Mr. Crowley published his books, and they ended up going defunct. Now, the book that I have, this one is a title. It's called Life Story. This is issue number 13. And you may see up there, it says Crowley copy. So this was actually his file copy. Now, I think this is probably, I would really have to dig into it a little bit more, and I should have done that before I started this video. But I think this is probably the highest graded copy. If not, it's pretty darn close. This is a 9.2 with creamed off-white pages, and it's from April of 1950. So this book is 73 years old now. That's not bad, huh? Nevertheless, they were romance books, and it doesn't give me a whole lot of information, and I really don't want to crack it out just to find that information out. I'm sure there's probably other copies that are out there somewhere, but nevertheless, he wanted to attract young female readers. Books even got a photo cover, which I think is kind of cool. You don't even get those too often these days. The back, interestingly enough, advertises another book called True Confessions. And I don't know much about that, to be honest with you, but it goes to who do you appeal to with a certain book. Now, going forward, Fawcett Company goes defunct in the mid-1950s, and the whole Captain Marvel thing was left alone. DC was like, good, we killed it. We don't have that competition with Superman, so it's out of the way. But we get to about 1961 or so, and a man by the name of Stan Lee has kind of taken the reins at a company that was called Timely, and he changes the name to Marvel Comics as a tribute to the original Marvel Comics #1 and that series of books turned into Marvel Mystery Comics after I think issue 2. But anyway, he kind of drew back on the company history and decided, we're going to call it Marvel Comics. Nobody had a problem with that. None. It was a non-issue. And then a few years later, we get to about 1968, as I recall, and he decides he wants to publish and take over. You know what? He says, nobody's using the name Captain Marvel anymore. I'm going to use it, and we'll just use it as a test. And so, in Marvel Superheroes number 12, over here, he brings out a character named Captain Marvel. Well, since DC wasn't using it and hadn't used it in at least 10 years at that point, Fawcett was defunct, he didn't see a problem with it. And it came out, and lo and behold, DC Comics seemingly lost their minds and drew into a legal battle, which Stan Lee and now Marvel Comics actually won. And what that meant is that the character who was previously known as Captain Marvel, or we know as Shazam, suddenly became able to be used. That name was used by Marvel. And we get to 1973, and the legal battles are kind of settled down, and DC decides, we're kind of in one of those cycles where these kids need to be exposed to this hero, and we can pull on all the history that we had going back to the early 40s with Captain Marvel, and we're just going to have to call him Shazam, which was the magic word. Now, here we are, and they launch it, and the title says Shazam, the original Captain Marvel. And ladies and gentlemen, there you go. that's the story of Captain Marvel and how it ties into my Crowley copy book. A little bit known about that pedigree. As always, my name is Patrick, and I am the comic book veteran.